Honorable Minister Charles Ramson, Organizing Committee of the Second Annual Wellbeing Conference, panelists, teachers, and most importantly, our students. Warm good afternoon to you all. My name is Silandel Glenn, and I'm currently serving in the position as the Adolescent Coordinator for the Adolescent Health Department, Ministry of Health. And today I am extremely honored to be your moderator for the session, a workshop for young ambassadors for safe spaces with respect to mental health and well-being of our young people. Today we have a very dynamic panelist, and we have a wealth of young persons that are in the room, and we're encouraging our students and teachers and other participants to fully participate in this session and engage with our panelists. The panelists will go through a brief presentation that they would have prepared, and at the end of the session, we will ask or we'll open it for questions and answers. We don't only want the adults asking questions, we would love to hear from our students. So I will go ahead and introduce the speakers. And as you notice, we have a young student among our panelists, and I'm very happy to see her sitting among all these specialists. So our first speaker will be Miss Breann Ritchie, and she is a student. She's 12 years old, and she would have used her own mental health journey with abuse and trauma to inform the platform or strategy for coping with stress. She emphasizes the benefits of physical exercise or activities and sports in coping with a mechanism as a coping mechanism for children in domestic abusive situations, which is a cause of mental conditions among young people. Especially, she believes that young people's hope to cope lies in sports and aim to minimize depression, anxiety, panic attacks, etc., which has shown positive influence in our own family. So, Ms. Ritchie, I will invite you to address our audience this afternoon.
All protocols properly and adequately observed. Audience all. Statistically speaking, numbers don't lie, and a wealth of information is on the internet for us to access. What we cannot truly access is the core of our feelings when we as young people suffer from mental health conditions that are debilitating. We go through withdrawals mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and physically due to the causes of mental health issues from so young. We often feel it's normal to live with lack of energy due to depression, anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, eating, and addictive disorders. At a recent PTA meeting, my teachers told my mother that although I get my classwork done, I would walk around a lot and oftentimes get too talkative. These are classic signs of anxiety. Most times it's difficult for me to get out of bed and get my chores done due to low energy levels. Classic signs of depression. I'm just fortunate my mother does not look at me as being lazy, and this is because she understands to some extent what I'm going through. I also go through spats of eating disorders. I'm lucky I overeat. And we're not sure whether it's because I'm growing too fast or to attribute it to an disorder. So we'll put that one aside for now. On a serious note, worldwide statistics shows 10% of children and adolescents experience mental health disorders, including addictive behavior and schizophrenia, the worst kind of mental health disorder in young people. Coping mechanisms through sports and exercise. How do we cope, especially without clinical diagnosis, therapy, and or pharmaceuticals? Sports and exercise, which we know go hand in hand with each other. My mother saw it fit, even without knowing how beneficial it was at the time, to have me and my brother engage in sporting activities to occupy our minds to keep us worrying about what was or is going on at home. We played almost every sport except cricket. Sorry, Minister Ramson. And even engaged in chess. There are two parts of the brain that will benefit immensely from exercise, since the brain also benefits from being conditioned through daily walking, running, etc. The frontal lobe, which is responsible for making decisions, and the hippocampus, which is embedded deep in the temporal lobe. It has a major role to play in learning and memory. The other factor is sports is fun, especially since we engage with our peers. In most cases, we laugh a lot, which stimulates many organs, enhances your oxygen-rich intake, stimulates your heart, lungs, and muscles, and increases the endorphins that are released by your brain. In closing, I've narrowed down my choices of sports to basketball and swimming, which work for me. To my peers who need this information, you can access track and field clubs that are particularly free in the national park. They are running Braves with Coach Julian Edmonds and Youth Basketball Guyana at the Cliff Anderson Sports Hall with Coach Chris Bowman to start this. Thanks to our Honorable Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports, Charles Ramson Jr., and by extension, the government of Guyana, for making playgrounds in many communities accessible for young people to play sports. A message to our parents, especially absentee fathers, and our government. We, your young children and adolescents, are human. We get affected and we hurt. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benn, and I'm very happy that you have highlighted some important stats for us. And this afternoon, I'm more particularly happy that as a young person, you're not afraid to share your journey with mental health issues. And because of you, we'll now see more young people talking about what they're going through. And also the message to parents that is important for us that is important for parents to understand, and even when I become a parent, to understand that our children do experience mental health issues and they need to be heard. I also like the fact that you spoke about the importance of sports as a coping mechanism to help young people cope with mental health issues that they're experiencing. And it also goes to show that there's so many other interventions that we could actually adopt as a country, as a ministry, to ensure that our young people are taken care of and that they are safe. So at this point, I will now like to invite our second speaker, who is Miss Alicia Solomon. Miss Alicia Solomon holds a Bachelor of Science in Social Work, and she's currently a Master's of Social Work candidate. She's a national coordinator for suicide prevention and a social worker attached to the Mental Health Unit, Ministry of Health. Ms. Solomon has been a social worker in Guyana, Ministry of Health, Mental Health Unit for the past 6 years, where she's actively involved in psychological evaluation of community members. Ms. Solomon assumed a leading role as a suicide prevention coordinator in the Ministry of Health and was appointed as a clinical coordinator for the Guyana Wellbeing Study. In her latter role, she's responsible for assigning and supervising staff who conduct research interviews in suicide attempters study and the study of those with family members who have died by suicide. Ms. Solomon, thank you very much for your hard work in the Ministry of Health Mental Health Unit and in your capacity as the Suicide Prevention Coordinator. I would now like to invite you to make your remarks.
Mike doesn't want me to talk. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Minister, all protocols already established. My task here this afternoon in the capacity of the Suicide Prevention Coordinator is to speak to you briefly on why we're doing this. This conference is very timely for Guyana, and this session is very timely. This session was inspired by our none other than Ms. Breann Ritchie. She would have submitted her abstract for the Guyana Wellbeing Conference, and we thought that it is important that we bring our young people to the conversation. We need to include them. We want to hear from them. And as such, we decided that we want to create a platform for our students to hear from them and to share with them the importance of raising awareness as young people. And she was brave enough to share her own experience and her struggle with mental health and how she was able to cope using sports as a coping mechanism. And so we decided from reading her abstract, that we want to bring young people, and so that we can provide an environment and a safe space so that they can share their experience, and to encourage them not to bully or to address students in a negative way when they speak about their own mental health. Also, for parents to take up leading roles and let them understand that our children also can and are likely to suffer with mental illness. And it's our role as parents to support and encourage them and to get them help in a timely manner. Early intervention saves lives. And if we can recognize from a very early age that our young people are suffering and we can get them to help, it will help them in the future. There are statistics to show that many young persons or many mental health issues start before the age of 14. And if we can recognize that and we can get them the help, the support that is necessary and needed to get them better, we can have better, healthy, functioning adults as they continue to grow. Also, we understand that young people has a role in mental health. We will all leave them behind. And so we have to create a space that they can take leading role and understand that mental health is an important aspect of health and of their life. And if we can encourage them to take up leading roles, we can see them moving forward and taking up the mantle easily. So without further ado, I would like to encourage the young people in this room and those that are listening online, as well as who will hear this conversation, that you also have a role to play. And so don't be afraid to speak up and be a part of the conversation. And remember, there is no health without mental health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Solomon. And indeed, there is no health without mental health. And it's also important, as you would have indicated, that early intervention indeed saves lives. And giving young people the voice and the opportunity to talk about what is needed or what they can participate in to create the change in the area of mental health and well-being is important. And once we have the young people involved, we can ensure that the stigma attached to mental health services is reduced and more young persons have access to mental health services and information. So thank you very much. And I do believe that creating safe spaces for our young people in Guyana and around the world is important. And thank you again, Ms. Ritchie, for inspiring this special event today. Let's give her Ms. Ritchie a big round of applause. Our next speaker this afternoon is no stranger to the education sector. We have Dr. Olato Sam. He currently holds a PhD and a Master of Arts, and he's currently the Secretary General for the Guyana National Commission of UNESCO Guyana. Dr. Sam is currently performing the duties of the Secretary General, and additionally, he is a lecturer at the University of Guyana. He holds a PhD in the area of education and policy planning from the University of the West Indies, Mona, and a master's degree in international education with a concentration in Latin America and Caribbean from the New York University. From 2011 to 2016, he served as the Chief Education Officer of Guyana. In 2017, he was reappointed to the Ministry of Education as the Education Specialist in the Office of the Minister of Education. Without further ado, Dr. Sam, welcome to the podium.
Thank you very much. Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, Honorable Charles Ramson. other panelists, participants all. I think it's quite commendable that Ms. Ritchie would have taken the initiative to submit her abstract and to certainly sit here before us at such a young age to actually communicate to this forum some of her experiences and concerns, and they're well placed. I certainly welcome the opportunity for us to have all of our students here, recognizing, of course, that this particular dimension of their lived experiences might not be as pronounced and recognized within the context of our education system to the extent that it should be. We have adequate statistics that indicate that we have problems consistently throughout the education system, not just with suicide and attempts to commit suicide, but also non-suicidal self-injury. And if we're being very honest, we are not as prepared, as trained, and as aware as we should be in relation to recognizing and addressing some of these issues in the education system. And that, I think, underscores the critical importance of this conference. During the course of the last few days, I've learned quite a bit. And I'm certainly making an open appeal to not just our colleagues within the sister ministries, but our friend at PAHO, our other colleagues from Columbia University, that we can collectively begin to establish better mechanisms for recognizing our students' needs at earlier stages and providing the kind of interventions our sister just alluded to. By working in tandem, we can develop the profiles, do the necessary assessments, do the required diagnoses. Our teachers are certainly at the forefront with regards to engaging our students nationally. But I would venture to say that with all that they have as responsibilities currently, they're ill-equipped to effectively address. But with the support coming from our sister ministry, the Ministry of Health, we can certainly begin to develop the skills necessary for ensuring that our students do not slip through the cracks, and that we attempt to address the problems much too late, as is done in many situations. Our Minister of Health, the Honorable Frank Anthony, spoke about the statistics nationally. And of course, our schools are a microcosm of the wider society, so those issues certainly are quite present in our institutions. We would like to know that some better data gathering is being done and accurate statistics are being kept. We'd like to know that we have the tools available to equip our teachers. We'd also like to see opportunities whereby training for teachers can be done to raise the levels of awareness, not just of teachers, but also of students, because oftentimes from anecdotal evidence, I had a head teacher recently indicate to me that she found out that some of her students were cutting, but she didn't find that out from the students themselves. Their peers were very much aware of what was going on. And although some of them had been sworn to secrecy, thought it necessary to come forward to say, look, I have a good friend who has a problem. In those situations, we find it very difficult to get the actual counselors that our students might need and the other types of assistance that they require to address the issues they're confronted with. So in sum, I think this is an opportunity for us all to begin to recognize in a real way and define very specific strategic approaches as to how we can better serve our young people. And of course, this transcends our schools, but given that we have them in that captive environment for 6 hours a day, I think it's an ideal place for us to start working together to ensure that our students fare better when they're confronted with mental health issues. So those were the words I wanted to communicate, and I thank you all very much for the time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. And I really love the fact that you would have highlighted the importance of collaboration in order for us to really effect change in the area of mental health and well-being with our children and adolescents at that school level. We really need to work together, have that intersectoral approach, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Health, and also our partners such as POWER, UNICEF, and Columbia University. All right. Our next speaker that we have this afternoon is no other than Dr. George Musa, and he's a part of the conference organizing committee. Dr. George Musa is the Assistant Professor of Clinical Epidemiology at the Mailman School of Public Health, Columbia University. Dr. Musa is a medical geographer and a deputy director of the Global Psychiatric Epidemiology Group from the Columbia University in New York. He has had a leading role in the GPEG research project throughout the world. His research focuses on place and its relationship to individuals and community health. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. George Musa.
Thank you very much, Ms. Glenn, Honorable Mr. and fellow panelists. I'm here to really learn more from all of you than to say anything that I could possibly say. But as a geographer, you might be asking, why is a geographer in this sort of panel, and who even studies geography anymore, right? But I'm here to say that you're right. Sports does help mental health. It does improve the mental health. In fact, there's a lot of research that is showing that having an open space in a park in your neighborhood helps to decrease stressors and helps to decrease other symptoms in physical health as well. And on top of that, the quality of the park, the quality, the cleanliness of the park, the condition of the park, that obviously the safety of the park is critical for the open space to really help the individuals. So Ms. Ritchie, I am in total awe of you. At 12 years old, I can't even remember what I was doing. And to be at your age and be such an inspiration to not only your classmates, but to me, I'm just in awe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. George, and we do look forward to your continued support. Our next speaker is Professor Helen Herrman, and she's also a part of the organizing committee. So thank you for your hard work. Professor Herrman is a world-renowned leader in global mental health. She's the immediate past president of the World Psychiatric Association and she's a psychiatrist and a public health practitioner. A former research fellow of the Australian National Health and Medical Council. She is the director of the WHO Collaborating Center in Mental Health in Melbourne, Australia, and formerly served for 1 year as the acting regional advisor of the Health of Marginalized Group. Without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Helena to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alicia, for that warm welcome. And to the organisers, my fellow organisers, for the invitation to be part of this very special panel. So greetings to ministers, to all my panelists and to ladies and gentlemen and all here, young people especially. This is, in my experience of working in mental health, including youth mental health, this is one of the most special occasions and possibly one of the most important sessions of this meeting. The idea of taking advice and guidance from young people is fundamental to the work that we were doing in the World Psychiatric Association and that we do in my own centre in Melbourne in Australia, where we have a centre, National Centre for Youth Mental Health, linked to our university, the University of Melbourne. And we have young people on the governing board of the organisation. They're part of the research committee, they're part of the committees that are concerned with quality of care, because it's a research and a clinical environment. And we have an advisory council of young people from all over the country. And some of the work is also in peer support, meaning that they are part of the clinical teams as well. Of course, we're not here to talk about clinical care, but I think in a lot about the work that we've been doing, we've become increasingly aware of the power of bringing young people together and tapping into the energy and wisdom that young people have, as evidenced by our panelists today. Not only that, it's bringing together groups that don't normally talk to each other. How often do we bring together young people from school together with mental health professionals, together with the ministers of education, culture, youth and sport and health? And how often do we get these groups to work together to create plans and to keep on track the quality of the work that we're doing? I think that's what we're about creating here. And the idea, I think a brilliant idea from the chief organisers of this meeting to create a group of ambassadors for safe spaces for young people, as well as preventing suicide. So why do we talk about safe spaces? I think in many parts of the world, of course, in fact, most parts of the world, the streets are not safe. The communities are not safe. Homes are not safe. We have good evidence that up to 1/3 of households, there is intimate partner violence and child maltreatment. We don't often talk about that publicly enough. So young people are exposed to that, but also to many other difficulties in life, as well as to many wonderful opportunities. I think look forward to hearing from the Minister for Culture, Youth and Sports, Culture, Youth and Arts. Yes, but whatever combination that your title is, I think this is one of the most important groups. That we have places where young people gather, and ensuring that they're safe is the first thing. The second thing is to provide opportunities to meet people with mental health expertise. They don't have to be labelled psychologist or psychiatrist, but the youth workers, the police, the welfare workers, if we can enable them to understand enough about mental health and suicide prevention with reasonably simple training in connection with mental health professionals, this can go a long way to ensuring the individual safety and the engagement in activities that will give them more hope and energy, but also enable those that need it to be offered appropriate support and care. I was really interested to hear Minister Sam talk about the work in schools. I think this is where the young people are, and engaging the young people also in creating a positive school climate has been shown in India and in other countries to be one of the most effective ways to improve mental health in young people. And even we're providing connections for those that need help. Overall, that school climate, that whole school approach, supporting the teachers, supporting the school leadership in supporting teachers, creating positive relationships between teachers, students, and among the students themselves, reducing school bullying. So, and allowing the opportunities for participations in sports and arts and other things. So I thanks for the opportunity to speak, and looking forward to working with you as possible over time, and to hearing more today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Herrman, for your remarks. And I do like the fact that you highlighted that we really need to ensure that our teachers and students work together to enhance mental health and well-being, and also to stop the other issues such as bullying that might occur within our classrooms. Our next speaker this afternoon is Dr. Anil Tulsi. He is a medical doctor at the West Des Moines Regional Hospital. Dr. Tulsi, in his position at the West Des Moines Regional Hospital, serves as a doctor of internal medicine. He's also a member of the President's Youth Advisory Council. As part of his role on the Youth Advisory Council, he's actively engaged in assisting with policy change within Guyana. Dr. Tulsi.
Thank you so much. Honorable Minister Charles Ramson, esteemed members of the panel, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. A pleasant good afternoon to you all. I am Dr. Anil Tulsi, and I'm a proud representative of the President's Youth Advisory Council. This afternoon, it is my pleasure to join the panel for the discussion on youth ambassadors for safe space and against suicide. In a society where suicide is very prevalent, where we can agree that there's a need for youth ambassadors to push for mental wellness, and I must state that youths are the largest population in Guyana, and youths are mostly affected by suicide in Guyana. Our society comprises of different social groups, and different persons from these different groups have different coping mechanisms. While some persons turn to sports and music as coping mechanisms, others may reach out to religious leaders to seek prayers and guidance. We also have a fraction of our society who feel entrapped, with no one to reach out to and nowhere to seek guidance, possibly because of their fear of confidentiality being broken, and also the fear of being stigmatized. This group gravitates towards self-inflicted harm in order to escape from their foreboding circumstances. They begin to doubt themselves and lose their self-esteem. This brings about suicidal ideation, and unfortunately, most often, suicide is attempted. For this reason, it is important that ambassadors like musicians, athletes, local influencers, social media influencers, etc., to take up the task to constantly speak on issues surrounding mental health. And with this, they can develop a safe space where youths can open up about their issues and not have to worry about confidentiality being broken or them being stigmatized. A safe space, a support group, a friend is sometimes all that we need. As it stands, there's a need for more to take up the initiative to undergo training on how to deal with different issues surrounding mental health, thereby becoming youth ambassadors for mental health. This is in keeping with some of the objectives of the President's Youth Advisory Council, as training is a huge part of the initiative to reduce suicide rate. Some areas of focus include spreading awareness. We are aspiring to move away from the use of pamphlets. Instead, utilize social media. A lot of young people are on TikTok, are on Instagram, Facebook. You don't find them reading pamphlets anymore. They follow different persons on social media. So having those social media influencers talk about issues surrounding mental health, we think that this would make a big difference for them in spreading awareness for mental wellness. Training local influencers within communities such as hairstylists, barbers, religious leaders, sport coaches, shop owners, etc., to create a pathway of eradicating stigmatization and create safe spaces. In our communities, most social gatherings occur at these places. So if we have local influencers as ambassadors for mental wellness, they can easily deal with different situations that may arise, thereby being well equipped to give guidance and counsel when the need arises. Utilizing the education system to its full potential in delivering adequate exposure to extracurricular activities. The President Youth Advisory Council is working towards making extracurricular activities mandatory for all schools at all different levels, ensuring that students are adequately exposed to sports and music, and thereby developing their coping mechanisms through these mediums. Participation in extracurricular activities foster growth and well-rounded individuals. While participating in these activities, the level of the hormone cortisol, which is responsible for stress and anxiety, it usually decreases, and the hormone endorphin, which makes you happy, increases. So participating in sports directly makes you happier. In stressful situations, we get hooked by different negative thoughts and feelings, which pulls us away from our values. By taking up extracurricular activities such as sports and music, we allow students the opportunity to unhook and direct their focus on something more positive, thereby becoming more emotionally grounded, where they can focus on enjoying the world around them. We also want to push to have guidance and counseling officers at every school. We are hoping to achieve this. Youth ambassadors for safe space and against suicide are much needed to enhance our fight for mental wellness. I conclude my speech by leaving a small message. A giant tree grows from a tiny seed. Small changes we make today can result in a huge difference for tomorrow. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Doc. And I'm very happy to know that there is room or scope to collaborate with the Ghanaian National Youth Council. I like the fact that you talk about using social media influencers, because we have to be realistic in today's society. Our young people are not reading pamphlets. All right, so indeed, I'm happy to hear that. And I know that there are other players or other donor agencies that are working towards also engaging social media influencers to create awareness to help us to reduce the stigma with respect to mental health and well-being, especially among this target population. Our next speaker, or final speaker this afternoon, is no other than the Honorable Minister Charles Ramson, who is the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to take the opportunity to congratulate the organizers of this event, to say that it is very important that we are able to have a forum such as this and use this as a segue for us to continue the work that's important for advancing the important strategies and mechanisms, etc., that will be deployed, currently being deployed, and enhancing that to improve the issues that are connected to mental health. And I'm very mindful about the glossy look that I see on many of the persons who are here right now, so I won't be very long in my opening presentation. I want everyone to be aware, though, that this is a very complex issue, and that there are many important factors which have been mentioned, some of which have been mentioned in some of the previous presentations that we've had already. that deals specifically with mental health. But that's one of the important things that actually came from our experience with COVID. In fact, for policymakers, it actually amplified the importance of mental health for the world. Young people, middle-aged people, young adults, older people. It really amplified the importance of mental health, and from a policy-making standpoint, what are some of the things that we should be doing? So, for example, when I assumed office, one of the areas that we have responsibility for is sports and communities, and there's a line in my budget that deals with investment in sports facilities and community centers. We started our first budget with $54 million in 2020. This year, just because of how important that investment is to communities and how President Ali and the ministry sees that investment in communities, it's now at $450 million for this year alone. And I've taken on community grounds and community centers as something that has been my personal attention coming from the ministry, which in a way that you would never have seen it before, and you would never have seen the scale of the investment happening before. And part of it is because of what we would have seen and experienced during COVID. There were healthy people, folks who didn't have an experience with depression and any mental health related issues, that for the first time, because of the disruption that we faced in the world, that they went through serious trauma in their lives. I knew people personally that experienced that. And when you go into rural areas, so we have the luxury of, in a COVID-free environment, we have the luxury of having many things that are able to give us the avenues for enjoyment and leisure and socializing and connections and entertainment. In many of the rural areas, they don't have that. And when you check the statistics coming from the Ministry of Health, which the Minister of Health, Honorable Frank Anthony, who did a presentation here in the Parliament in the last parliamentary session, where he was able to explain some of the important data in one of the amendments to the law that we made, which was that we removed the criminalization of suicide. We removed that as an offense. So if somebody attempted to commit suicide, we removed that as an offense, which has been an offense for decades, since time immemorial. We should not be punishing people who, and this is the reason why we did it, we should not be punishing people who saw it as being in such an unfortunate state of mental affair that they felt that suicide was the only way out. And when Minister Anthony made the presentation, which it's important to note just for the record that there has been a decline in the numbers for suicide in the country, according to their statistic. I know there has been some debate about that, but that's something that's important to note. But when you examine what happens in the rural areas, those statistics are reflected in what you see in the rural areas, which is that the avenue for being able to access leisure and connect with their friends and having other areas of opportunities and for their life, etc. It is consistent with the data that was presented by Minister Anthony. And that's one of the reasons why I took on at the beginning that this was going to be such an important avenue for young people. And the scale of the investment that we're making in sports facilities and starting the National Sports Academy, which has never happened before. In fact, it's the first for the region. It's important because the world is changing. And parents have a very important role to play in the engagement that they have with young people. The culture in Guyana, in the older generation, was one where, and I'm glad Breann had mentioned it, referenced it when she was speaking about parents, but it's something that parents have to learn now. That long ago, or in my generation of parents would turn around and say, don't do something. And if the children would ask and say, why mommy, or why daddy? The answer was always, because I said so. Today's generation is, because I have 2 kids of my own, if they turn around and I say, don't do something, and they turn around and say, why daddy? The answer is, because X, Y, Z. There's an explanation. And so that transition, that evolution of the culture in relation to parents have to happen by fostering this conversation that's happening right now. And that's why it's important that we have this, but it's not only important for it to happen here, it has to happen in many other places. The second part of what I want to see come out of this conversation that we're having today is that when we're speaking about the coping mechanisms that you just mentioned a moment ago, and many other persons would have mentioned about the coping mechanisms. The coping mechanisms don't deal with the sources of the problem. How is it that you end up with the mental health issue that ultimately just keeps snowballing into possibly a depression, and sometimes even worse, which leads sometimes to suicide or attempted suicide. And dealing with the sources of the issue is something that we all have the responsibility for. Now, in this room alone, we have many adults. Outside the kids that we have here, we have many adults. How many of the adults have taken on the personal responsibility? Without having a structure or a program or something that the government initiates, how many of the adults have put up their hand and said, we are going to be mentoring 5, 10, 20 persons a month, young people? There are very few. I know you will find that there are a few, and I can extend that across the country. I can extend that across the world. The world is getting busier, no doubt. There is a direct correlation between the time that you put into your work and how much you're getting in your reward for your time dedicated to work, and the equivalent things that you can do with enjoying your time in the world and the time while you're alive. But there's also an absence of that dedicated, selfless measure that goes into how much mentorship that you're personally doing. So I think that all of us, we know that there exists a problem. I knew that exists a problem, and we're doing stuff on the government side. Yes, we're doing a lot. But from a personal side too, there's also things that all of us can do. Taking on the responsibility of saying 20 persons, 20 young people a month, or every 6 months, or something like that. You have to know what you can accommodate. But they need your help. They need your support. And the problem is that many times when the issues become identified, sometimes it's too late. because then the person is already gone to a state where they might have done something really bad to themselves. And so I'm hoping that the conference allows for much more than the discussion and a resolution afterwards, which is often the outcome of the conferences, but it's also undertaking the personal responsibility as young adults or older, the folks who are older and educated and the ones who understand life in a deeper way and they have a lot of experience and wisdom to share. Because at some point too, even for you, and it becomes difficult to pass that on. And I believe that there are times when you would have wished that you would have done that too. So I'm very pleased to be associated with this conference, to widen the discussion and to encourage everybody to undertake the responsibility for everyone else. We belong to each other, and the young people are not the future, they are the now, and they need our assistance now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Charles Ramson. And I do like the fact that you would have pointed out the importance of us as individuals, or as each individual doing their part to support our adolescents and young people. And I know just recently, Power WHO would have launched their Do Your Share campaign, which encourages us as citizens, not only of Guyana, but of the world, to stand up and do your part in the fight against mental health and well-being. I also like the fact that you spoke about mentorship. Indeed, our young people need mentorship, and as older adults, as young adults, we need to play our part and provide that support to our young people. And not when something actually happens, we say to them, but you should not have. We have the experience as older adults, so we should use our experience to create that behavior change among our young people. And also the young people, you also have your experiences. Use it to share with your peers to create behavior change among yourselves. Finally, I also like the fact that you spoke about dealing with the underlying issue or the cause of the mental health issue. There's so many issues such as trauma within the household, violence, and all of these things that contribute to an adolescent developing mental health issues. So we actually need to look at those issues and also deal with those issues. So before we go into the question and answering segment of this afternoon's presentation or session, I would like to invite Dr. Christina Ovid, who is the lead or the conference chair, to say a few words.
I want to do it this way. So I want to turn this around and speak directly to the youth that are here. Most of them are on this side, I'm sorry. So I think we had a fantastic privilege to hear an outstanding panel speaking to the issues of better mental health. We heard from the minister, we heard from the President's Council, we heard from outstanding university professors, we heard from the Ministry of Education. We now have everyone's attention. We are here because of a voice, one voice. Where'd you go? One voice. It was a voice of your peers. She wrote an abstract, and that's why we're all here. We're not here because any one of the adults thought that we should get together and talk about this. We missed the point, and we often miss the point. We're here because one of your peers wrote an abstract. Your peer had a voice, but I want to encourage you to always know that you have a voice and you have an outstanding leadership right here waiting to hear from you. They have said today that they are prepared, and I believe it 100%, that they are prepared to serve you, and they are asking you to help. They need you. They can't do it alone. They can do all kinds of things, but they cannot do it alone. They need the voice of the youth. That's you. You have to decide how you're going to help. And I encourage you to do just like your peer and wrote an abstract, speak up and demand more mental health services, demand of the Ministry of Education that they have counselors in the school, demand of the sports facilities that they serve not only the boys, but they serve the girls, because we're very good at serving athletically, providing services for the boys. We need services for the girls. We can do this, but we all need to come to the table, all of us. We all have a voice. Do not allow the adults to drown out your voice. Speak up and demand services and help. Whenever you need help, ask for it. It's available. It's available, and you have heard a commitment today that there's going to be more services. So let's all do this together. And I have to tell you, I am so thrilled that you're here, and I particularly want to thank Cindy and Alicia for helping to bring this meeting to what it is today. And I want to thank the panel immensely for all your great conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ovid. Now we have another special young lady who would like to share with us this afternoon. So I will give her the opportunity to do so. Her name is Jada Singh. Thank you for being here this afternoon.
Protocols observed. My name is Jada Singh, a student attending the Cummins Lodge Secondary School, and I am a big supporter when it comes to mental health for children. Like myself, today, I would like to go a bit in depth on the causes of mental illness in children. Mental illness among children are described as serious changes in the way children typically learn, behave, or handle themselves. Which causes distress and problems getting through the day. There are many reasons that a child can suffer mentally, but almost all of the reasons stem from two interconnected roots. These roots are anxiety and depression. Anxiety occurs when a child does not outgrow the fear and worries that are typical in young children, or when there are so many fears and worries that they interfere with school, home, or play activities. When a child has anxiety, he or she is usually afraid when away from parents, or even afraid of school and other places where there are people. Occasionally, being sad or feeling hopeless is a part of every child's life. However, some children feel sad or uninterested in things that they used to enjoy, or feel helpless or hopeless in situations they are able to change. When children feel persistent sadness and hopelessness, they may be diagnosed with depression. This can be seen when a child is showing changes in sleep pattern or self-injury behavior. You're probably asking yourself right now, but how does a child just become diagnosed with anxiety or depression? Just like that? According to a famous UK website, Children First, the biggest reason for mental illness in children is having a long-term illness. How many of you use Netflix or even one of those sites like Gujara to watch shows? If you do, then you've probably seen or heard about a series called The Midnight Club. This show really does a good job and sends a powerful message in relation to mental health. It shows a group of teenagers living with cancer who are fighting for their lives, but at the same time, they're battling with themselves and their minds. Although they're fighting, they're also losing hope from the anxiety that's eating them from the inside. Another reason for mental illness in children is moving homes or changing schools. A research involving 6,500 children by SecEd shows that the author of the study suggests that moving schools often may also lead to feeling of low esteem and a sense of social defeat. They also warn that the feeling of being excluded, which often comes with moving schools frequently, can heighten the risk of psychotic-like symptoms in vulnerable individuals. Being bullied is also one of the many factors that are affecting children's mental health. And in most cases, it is a reason for suicide or suicidal attempts. There is an article from 2020 when a young girl was led to depression and psychiatric hospitalization due to bullying. According to her mother, quote, when Alicia was 18 months old, she was diagnosed with blunt disease, a rare condition that affects the way she walks. Because of this disease, Annalise has undergone multiple surgeries, which has impacted her physical and mental health. When she started school, children started bullying her. They constantly made fun of her for the way she walks, told her to kill herself, and sent death threats. It can be hard for kids to open up about these types of experience, and Annalise kept her feelings to herself for a while. Over time, the emotional pain built up inside Annalisa, and she experienced a mental health emergency. We went to a crisis center in Wichita, and they recommended we go to Canberra, Kansas City. In that time of crisis, I felt lost. I didn't know what to do, but at 2 in the morning, I drove my daughter to Wichita, to Kansas City, so she could get the treatment she needed, unquote. There are so many other reasons for mental illness in children, such as witnessing domestic violence, being abused, parents separating or divorcing, or someone close to them dying. I am honestly elated to have been given this opportunity to share these causes of mental illness in children with an audience as amazing as you. This brings me to the end of my presentation, and I hope you all took something from what I said to carry with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jada, for sharing with us. So now we'll move into our question and answering segment, and the floor is open to our students, teachers, and other participants to ask your questions. And I'm sure that our panelists will be ready to answer your questions. Any questions? Take this question.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. Deborah Dawson Cultures from Lenore Secondary. I am just wondering, there is a new trend and it's very sickening. So I'm wondering if that is another effect of mental health that is playing out there. I have noticed on the media the other day, in our group in Region 3, students are stopping minibuses and they're putting their foot up to clean their shoes and then locking back the minibus. They're not catching these buses, mind you. I'm wondering if trying to identify or just trying to show that they need attention for, I don't know if it's mental health or just attention's sake, but I would like you to address that, to say to me if you think it might have something to do with their thinking, because that is dangerous.
Panelists? I think Ms. Solomon will answer.
All right, so it is quite interesting because I've never heard it. I don't be shocked. I would have came off of social media for a while now. I don't really go on, so I don't know, but maybe something that is it's trending, but it's dangerous, and so what is it that we need to do is we need to have conversations with those children and with our young people, enlighten them on the risks that they're taking and helping them to create safe spaces again, talking to them and having those conversations. What may have led them to, or would have caused them to do something like that, and enlighten them on the danger and how they can make better informed decisions, right? So I will have to check it out, but I'm not sure. I have never seen it, so I don't want to comment further. But we need to have those conversations. It may not be a mental illness, but it may be something going on, and so people see it as fun because young people like to take risks, right? And sometimes they don't understand the dangers that those risks can lead them to, and so it is for us to have that conversation and to enlighten them and get them, help them to create safe spaces.
Any other panelists?
Can I make up a point?
Yes, go ahead.
My turn. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I've heard the question being asked by the teacher. Basically, when it speaks to mental health, one makes reference to the emotional, psychological, and well-being components of an individual. So if mental health affects how one thinks, behaves, and reacts to stressors within our society. What is happening there is a side effect of what's happening on social media, whereby they're picking up trends from foreign jurisdictions and basically applying it within our environment. We have to be very careful not to confuse behavioral actions as being one that is tied to a mental health challenge, because as you would know, with society, there are norms, mores, and that changes based on our society. So let us not confuse something that is social as tying it to a mental health challenge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ian Harris, for your comment. Miss, go right ahead.
Good afternoon. All protocols have been established. We heard that Minister Ramson spoke about each one playing his or her role. However, how can you play your role when you do not know what you are creating? How can you do that? You can be supportive, yes, but you can listen to the person, but if the person feels that's not adequate, how do you play your role? Because you can listen to somebody, but you're going through your own thing too. And if you do not know what are the indicators of mental health, how will you be able to help someone who has the same issue? It might be worsening a situation. I would appreciate if the panel can go ahead and hand to them. Thank you much.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a very important point that several panelists have touched on, that the advantages of bringing teachers into the conversations and working with teachers to strengthen their capacity to do their work. And it's not only understanding, as I think, what is good mental health, what are danger signs in mental health, but also how to deal with behaviour in classrooms. Many teachers are stressed out by the behaviour of students in the classroom, which interrupts the learning for everybody. So what are the ways that teachers, what resources do teachers have to call on? But in terms of understanding, what's safe or not safe to say, or how to react, or how to understand what's going on with students, there are some fairly simple guidelines. You know, it's a knowing that it's safe to ask students about their feelings, about their intentions, whether it's to self-harm or whatever. Understanding that that's generally safe to do, and that there are a number of other fairly simple guidelines. There's something called mental health first aid that's been offered in many countries to teachers, to police, to other public officials, to just to guide them. I think maybe that's part of what you're asking, but it would be important, I think, for perhaps saying before, getting people that don't normally talk to each other, perhaps getting groups of teachers together with students, with mental health professionals and parents, to be able to understand what are the questions and what are people asking of teachers, and then what sort of resources might be made available that will ease the teacher's burden rather than add to it. I don't think we can't possibly ask teachers to take on a new role. They've got too much to do already. But I think what you're asking is how do I do my job well, and what resources do I have, and who can I turn to when I think there's more to it than I can manage. So perhaps that conversation, putting groups together might be one way to consider that.
I also want to just say on behalf of the young people in the country, there are many times when the condition of mental health, without having to diagnose it as a mental health issue, many times there's a sense of feeling of hopelessness. Mm-hmm. And that emanates from or finds its genesis in not being able to have somebody to speak to in the first place. And I think the question that you're raising is it's an important question, but it doesn't obviate the responsibility of which for all young adults or professionals to take on the need to provide that avenue for the voice, and knowing that if there's somebody who has an issue, that they don't have no one to turn to. Now, in many, many instances, I've heard people tell stories about their personal experience where they were on the edge of something, in a very precarious situation, on the edge of doing something bad to themselves, and they spoke to someone. They had an opportunity to speak to someone, and that one person who they spoke to was really the person who helped to change their course of action. I've heard many, many stories like that. And so what I was really trying to impress upon everyone in relation to undertaking the responsibility is not so much from a clinical diagnosis standpoint, is that you don't want the environment for young people to become one of hopelessness, where they don't feel as though they can turn to anyone. And sometimes in the home, for example, you spoke about safe spaces, and you made an extremely important point, which is that even in other parts of the world, even on the streets, it's not a safe space. And then you complemented that by saying even at home, at times it's not safe space. So if you don't have safe spaces at home and you're going to school, I'm assuming that you're a teacher. You're a teacher? Yeah. So that if they're leaving their home and they're going somewhere, it means that your first point of contact with an adult in another space is at your school, but they have to be able to speak to somebody there too. So once you can identify that this is an issue, having heard what the issue is, then it can then graduate into seeing whether this is a clinical issue that needs further, not treatment, but implementation of some kind of measure.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and thank you, Miss, for your question. And I do know through the Ministry of Health, both the Adolescent Health Department and the Mental Health Department, we're working actively to ensure that our teachers are trained not necessarily to provide treatment, but to identify if a child or adolescent is having issues. We have our school health club program in our secondary schools, and also that will be extended to primary schools very shortly. So teachers will be equipped to make some sort of intervention in the classroom. I also know that with Ms. Solomon at the mental health unit, they're also doing teachers training across the regions to help teachers to identify and work with students. So thank you very much. I think we have another question over here, and then we have a question from our baby. So let us take the baby, and then we'll go to the question across the room.
I wouldn't say that I have a question. I just have an answer for the first question. I would say that mental health could start from someone not feeling like they were loved, and they can get traumatized and wouldn't feel their love. So they say, what's the point of my life anyways if I have no one to love? So it can start by not feeling that children are loved by their parents, friends, or anybody. So I would just say, we have to make children feel like they're loved instead of making them feel like nobody cares.
Thank you very much for that. I'm happy to see that we have our children and young people participating. So we'll go to the question across the room, then we'll take Jada, and then we'll take Dr. Bachan.
Okay, love, I'm very proud that you said that young kids in particular, are supposed to feel love. That's her way of expressing it. But for me, I feel like children need to feel like they are listened to. That is more specific, because what happens is that they might resort to other sources of feeling listened to if the people who are close to them and who they feel safe with do not listen to them. So one of the things I'm noticing nowadays is that social media is very rampantly in use, and children are more exposed to it. They're likelier to get carried away with it. So the thing is that I want you all to not necessarily find the safe space in social media, because I understand that if you find solace not in people, you want to find some place, but at the end of the day, human interaction is something that is going to heal you. So also when it comes to social media, please try to verify whether your sources are legitimate and well-sourced, because you don't want to be misinformed about things and start thinking, oh, I might have a problem that is too severe or something that cannot be helped out with. So please be careful about that. And please seek help from people. One of my favorite songs are titled People Help the People. So thank you. I hope you go from that.
Thank you very much.
I think us students should like try opening up to people like our parents or guardians, someone we feel safe to talk to. Because like if we keep keeping it like bottled up inside of us, it would make us go to suicidal violence. And I think yeah, you should talk to someone about it if any student in this room is suffering from anxiety or depression. So yeah,
That's important. Let's talk about it. Dr. Bachan?
Good afternoon, everyone. Right, so I have some very short questions for different individuals. We're talking about mental health and wellness, and I was just wondering, CEO, the HFLE curriculum, does it capture anything that would address this? And if so, then how come in some schools, for example, I'm going to talk about my daughter. She's in grade 4 at Enmore Hope Primary. Her HFLE book is blank from the beginning of the term. So I'm just going to assume that we're not doing anything in that area. And she complains that she's being bullied, not something for you to address, but I'm just saying, I feel like, you know, there are tools that we could use to help the children, and I feel like they're not getting it. Alicia, you guys mentioned, Alicia and Miss Glenn, that you guys are doing some training with the teachers on being able to identify some, I don't want to say disorders, but some issues there, which is good. I just like to have an idea as to where this training has occurred, how many people have benefited from it, what's actually happening as a result of implementing this. And then even if your teachers get trained, like Helen mentioned, how much can we put on the teachers? I asked myself, how much can I put on myself as a parent? And the healthcare workers are gonna ask, well, how much can you put on me as well? So how do we deal with that? Because everybody is going to feel overburdened. And even if they are able to identify a child who's at risk, then CEO, we don't have enough social workers in the system who will be able to deal with this. So it's a whole system problem from top to bottom. So I just want to know how we'll be able to start addressing some of these. Thank you.
Well, firstly, thanks for the question. Just a point though, I'm no longer CEO, but I can still respond. Part of the issue with the HFLE program, and you're right, with ensconced in the HFLE curriculum are a number of these related themes, and it can really serve to better prepare our young people. Part of the problem in the system, however, is that HFLE is not dedicated area specialization for teachers. So we don't have, up to now, we don't have trained HFLE teachers. And for that reason, in some schools, you can get the slippage that you've noticed, whereby you don't have a dedicated teacher using HFLE, and we ask oftentimes that they infuse it across the curriculum in other areas. But then that's left up to the school, unfortunately. All of them don't take it as seriously as they should. And so that's an issue that we are addressing at the Teacher Training College, Surapata College of Education. We are training more of our teachers in all of the areas to better address health and family life education across the curriculum. So I recognize that. But I sense your frustration in relation to the other aspect you raised. We have to work more in tandem with the Ministry of Health. As the doctor recognized, we need to get more guidance and counseling officers. We need school welfare officers. We have quite a shortage in Guyana generally, much less to adequately serve the vast education system that we have here. And recently we appointed some 20 some odd additional guidance and counselors, but it's just a drop in the bucket. So we're actively addressing this in the education system, but we need the support of the Ministry of Health and our other sister ministries, so that it's not just one avenue that's being pursued to address the issues, but you have a range of options. So the safe space, the peer support, the sports, and the other things that have been raised here by the panelists can collectively begin to address some of the issues. And if there's a higher level of awareness, I hope, we might not have to get the more intrusive kinds of solutions later on, because our children might develop better coping mechanisms from a much earlier stage. We would hope.
Thank you very much. Alicia, do you want to talk a bit about the teachers training?
Okay, so what I wanted to say about the teachers training, it is something that is ongoing. We would have only trained a fraction of teachers. So what happened is we would have asked the Department of Education in the various regions to select teachers from various schools, and they would have went through that selection process, and we would have trained teachers. So it's going to be an ongoing process until all the teachers are trained. And so we've only now started that, and so we're open to continue in 2023 to continue to train teachers, not only to identify, but to effectively refer and ensure that the students get the care. Also, it is not only for the students to get the care, but for the teachers to get the support, because in some of the regions that we've been to, we've recognized what the teacher is saying, that yes, we're training them to give care, but then we also need to get care. We've had to do intervention while we're doing those training with teachers who were self-harming, teachers who were experiencing mental health issues. We had to, in some sessions, something would have triggered and we had to step outside and do an intervention right there on the ground. So we don't want only to support the students, but also to support the teachers as well as the education department. And also we want the policymakers to understand the persons at the top of the education system to understand that it is not only that the teachers need to be trained on the students, but they themselves need to get the information that the teachers are getting. And so they'll understand the context in which the teacher will come to you and say that this is what is happening, we need your support. Right? And sometimes, a lot of times, I can give you what teacher would have said to me is that, yeah, come in and train me. The education officers, them just come and behave like a we're robots. And so we can train the teachers, we can prepare them and equip them to work with the students. But if the officers at the top and the policymakers do not understand what we're doing on the ground, then we like you said, the system is broken. So we can fix it from the bottom, but if upstairs doesn't know what is happening, then we are going nowhere.
So we have Dante, not a question across the room, Dr. Adekro, and then the young lady, Lorette. Oh, we also not on pick up. So Dante, go ahead. Wow, the hands are popping up. So Dante. So let me take the children first, and then I'll take the adults.
So one question, okay, actually, one thing that caught my attention, that what the young lady said, that joining a club or sport club will actually help with the mental health and stuff. But we all know that one fuel to mental health is bullying. So imagine you going to your school and dealing with bullying from your peers, and then going to a club. And you know, everyone knows that when you go to a club, you always have that one person that there's a bully in the club, and maybe not one club, maybe all other clubs too. So how would you go about to deal with that issue?
Yes, your question is very interesting. There is a bully everywhere. I've actually dealt with some sport areas I've been to. I think that bullies should be dealt with by consequences, that they should either serve some sort of suspension or something and be talked to with their actions, because they may be being abused at home and can't take out their emotions on their parents, so they come out now and take their emotions out on other people. So I think that they should have some sort of talk with them and help them to be a better person and stop them from what they're doing.
Yeah, I'd like to say that it's important that you let people know. It's a really important point that you raised. I think everybody is aware of bullying, and they would have either experienced it or known people who would have experienced it. And I want to Can you?
Yes.
Maybe we should bully GPL. Yeah, so letting folks in authority know, your team captain or your coach or somebody in that situation, that's making people aware that there is a problem so that the person can be spoken to. And, I just want to point out that social media, even though it is in some ways a good avenue for folks to connect and share their views and be part of forums and groups, etc., that provide a space for them to communicate. It also is we've seen the harmful effects of social media too, because there's cyberbullying that happens there. There's sometimes, memes and ridicule happening without any kind of reproach. But it doesn't only happen with young people, the bullying. In fact, even in the workplace today, many adults face bullying at their workplace. And that's because a lot of it wasn't even addressed when they were younger. The bullies, it wasn't addressed when it was younger. And I mean, I know stories of folks who would have come and speak about that, and they don't have the same kind of discussion that you're getting now. And that's why it's important that you use this avenue to express yourself, but also take the advice, which is that when you see it happening, even if it's not happening to you, you do something about it. Either, first of all, saying to the person that who is doing the bullying that this is not something that's right, or offering some support to the person who's being bullied, the victim, to let him know that you've got their back. And if that doesn't work, you speak to somebody in authority. So like a coach or the manager or the teacher or somebody that you know that can make the authorities or the adults aware that this is happening, so that they know that an intervention is necessary. And if you don't get through with one person, don't just stop at one person. You say to multiple persons until you get some kind of intervention there. Okay?
I would say that according to what she said, that children need to be heard, and I said they need to be listened to. They also need to be feeling like they're in a safe environment around people that wouldn't hurt them. You would be in a place that you are bullied, not listened to, not being shown any care for, and that just it just doesn't sit right with you. You would still want to know what you're living for, why God made you, or anything. So you have to feel like you're in a safe environment, also being listened to, cared for, and everything. Because I don't see the point in being in a place that you don't feel like you belong there. It's just like you are someplace and you don't want to be there anymore, or you're not getting the things that you want in one place, you go to another, still not getting it. It's just like crazy to be like that in a place that you don't feel like you belong because nobody loves you.
I'm happy that we're hearing from our young people. Yes, at the top.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jemacy Rose, and I'm from Christchurch. The young lady in front mentioned something, and she said that young people should open up more to their parents and talk about mental health with their parents, but parents, they're not educated enough when it comes to mental health, and they don't want to have those kinds of conversations because they don't want to believe that mental health actually exists. So what could be put in place for something like that?
Can I?
I just want to say that not all parents are not willing to listen. My parents, among with a lot of parents I've met, are willing to listen. So I just want to say that parents are willing to listen, and you can talk to them. And if you can't turn to a parent, you can turn to an older sibling, an aunt, a grandparent, someone else in the family you can talk to and get some sort of advice.
May I say something?
Go ahead.
The two comments by student here and the student at the back highlights the core challenge facing our society. That is, many parents have a difficulty understanding the challenges facing Generation Zs. They have a difficulty. So the challenge is that many do not have the know-how as a parent to be a parent to a child who is a Generation Z. So when a child is saying that I feel stressed, or I believe that I'm battling with a number of mental health challenges, for example, anxiety, the parent, because they're accustomed to a particular doctrine of teaching in the past, would say, what mental health challenge you could be having? You're a young girl, you're getting everything. So that child resorts to having a perception of not feeling loved, feeling appreciative. And the question, the comments made by the child in front of you, the student, highlights the everyday challenge faced by the average student living in the land of the living. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ian. But before we get to the next question, the student asked a very important point, and she did point out that parents are not educated. So for the panelists, can you tell us what are some of the things that we are doing to address this issue in terms of working with parents? Alicia. And yeah.
All right, so I can say for me, I would have done a lot of PTA sessions where I would have gone into schools and work with parent-teacher associations, work with parents on an individual level. Before actually working at the Ministry of Health, I was a school counselor and I worked in the school system, and I would have tried tremendously to raise awareness. And I still continue, even out of the school system and at the Ministry of Health, wherever my expertise is needed or wherever I'm called to have that conversation with parents. Even in my own community, there are times when I have to say to parents, you have to listen and you have to, and start that conversation within my own community, within my church setting, where I meet with persons and they will come and say, oh, you work in mental health. I need your advice. And so wherever I get the opportunity to have that conversation, I try to raise awareness. And so I oftentimes tell persons, don't be afraid to call me. And even at work, I encourage my peers, if somebody asks you, don't ever say no. Try to make yourself available and to talk, especially when it comes to our school and our children and our Parent Teachers Association. And I will continue to use the ministry resources to inform parents and teachers and students, working with parents in particular, and Parent Teachers Association, to empower them and prepare them to deal with students, especially experiencing mental illness or mental health problems.
Great. So that's another great area for collaboration with health and education to work with the parents. So we had a question from the gentleman in the blue, and then the young lady in the red, and then we'll go to the young woman in the red.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think this is a really great conversation. I am really moved by the comments made by the kids, which tell us that they understand at a very early age what are some of the factors that can contribute to health and well-being. I have a specific question for the UNESCO rep, particularly for the Ministry of Education, is that do you think that we have adequate counselors in the schools? You know, the University of Guyana do produce an average of 100 social workers per year. Recently, we started a bachelor's degree in psychology. And those are efforts to ensure that we have the social scientists to address the issues that we are discussing. And so the question is, have we ever made a determination as to the number of counselors? You know, a lot of talking about, put it in the curriculum of the teachers. The teachers will be the most complete professional because they will have to learn a bit of everything. Because I can recall at a previous conversation in another forum where we were discussing poor vision in kids. We will include that in the curriculum of the teachers so they can detect refraction errors in the kids. So everything, we'll put it in the teacher's curriculum. So we're making the teacher more of a generalist, but what we need now is a specialist to identify very important mental health issues. And so the question is, when are we going to have, what is the current situation with respect to having adequate number of counselors? And referring here, we have social workers, we have psychologists that are coming out from various universities. What is the current situation, and when are we going to have them in schools? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Dr. Cummings. As I mentioned earlier in response to the similar question or concern raised, we are by no means close to adequately filling those positions in our schools. There is a challenge in relation to finding the human resources for that. We're in the process actually of orienting a new batch of guidance counselors, but then You mentioned the issue of the school welfare officers. Although individuals do social work in large numbers, they are not transferring those skills to the education system, or not finding that role as appealing as we would hope. And so we're not getting the direct transfer from the university to the education system. And it's something that we're working on. We're actively recruiting new welfare and welfare officers and counselors, but we have a long way to go to even begin to say that it's anywhere close to adequate for the education system. But it sounds as though you're throwing out an offer for us to work in tandem, collaborate a bit more to address this. And I think it's something that we should further discuss and investigate.
Great. So we have the young lady in the red, then yellow, then we'll take the students, and then we'll come to you, sir.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. All protocols observed. My name is Denicia Henry, and I am a Berbetian youth advocate as well as an ambassador. For several years, I would have been involved in community and youth work. And this forum, one that allows children to actually interact with adults, and I must say, give adults a hard time in answering some questions, is something that is lacking in every single area. And while there is all this talk of creating safe spaces where children can verbally communicate their issues, we need to become and be more creative, in the sense that not every single child will feel comfortable talking. If we can have creation of rec rooms or rage rooms, which is something that is actually viable in the States, sometimes you just need to break things. You just need to smash things. You just need to scream. You just need to punch something, punch a wall. You just need to get all that aggression bottled up inside of you. You need to get that out. And there are not enough words sometimes to explain to adults what you're feeling. It's more of a show than tell situation. I don't know how possible it would be for the Ministry of Culture as well as Education to probably even test this out. Create rage rooms or spaces where, all right, children can don PPEs, or even adults, because sometimes it is better for an adult to smash something than for them to smash their child's head in, or to constantly be hitting them on their head. Sometimes people need to be hitting at things and not people, and they confuse the two. So we need to be able to have spaces where that aggression can come out. Because sometimes you just need to break things. So creatively, I'm asking if that can be considered. In addition to having dance studios, a lot of children now are on TikTok, yes. There's big crazes with different dance moves. For example, in Berbice, we don't necessarily have any dance studios or any spaces where, if children can practice, probably put on dance productions, get involved in something, because not everybody is into sport. There are different types of children that are being affected by mental illnesses. And we might not be able to cater to every single person, but we can't just look at children who, might be okay with verbally talking to somebody and leaving out children who are just not ready yet to be verbally expressive of their needs. In addition to that, I know there's PE happening in schools, but two things that I would have looked into would have been yoga and guided meditation. I don't know how possible it is to inculcate yoga and, just silent time in schools, teaching children how to meditate, even teachers, even parents. And aside from PTA meetings and,
leaving some of the burden on teachers. We need to start having, if it's even probably once a month, but having class sessions. If we're going to be doing HFLE classes, if it is possible for parents to attend, let them also be a part of those sessions. Because teaching children about sex and sex organs and talking about LGBTQ is all fine among your peers. But when a child goes home back and says, well, mommy, daddy, today I learned about this, I learned about that, parents from the old generation have an issue with talking about these things. They have a serious issue about confronting things and making things seem so taboo. Sex is something that is normal, it is natural. At some point, everybody might have to do it. But why is it when a child mentions sex in a room, parents start to cringe and be like, don't look at that, don't think, that child knows more about sex than you do. I'm telling you, children know more about sex than all of us adults in here combined. Pornography in schools is an issue. You know why? Because you're not talking about sex at home with your children. So guess what? Children are naturally explorative. They're going to go to school and they're going to have conversations with people who won't cuss back at them and who won't hit them and might actually be willing to say, you know what? I always wondered the same. Let's investigate. Let's find out. Children are not stupid. If we can have children at policy development levels, you will find out sometimes the answer is right there. And you don't need a master's or a degree or even a PhD to let you know what is wrong in some homes. And that little child down there actually perfectly said it. Listening is such a key important aspect of growing up that not all of us would have had that opportunity. I know when I had my issues, I turned to arts, to theater arts, and I was fortunate that my school was doing it, and it allowed me to get to where I am today. But all children are not fortunate in that regard. Also, you have 15, 16, 17-year-old children who have issues with feeling and behavior identification. They can't talk to anybody about their feelings or what is bothering them because they don't know what they're feeling. They can't describe it. They wouldn't have grown up in a place where persons would be like, I am angry, I am sad, I am this, I am that. So especially in quarantine or outlying areas, teachers are burdened to deal with children who would have gone through the system because of the No Child Left Behind policy. You have children in 5th form waiting to write exams and barely could write their names and don't know much beyond that. So if a teacher is teaching a specific level, she's not just dealing with children at that level. She has to be dealing with children with different developmental issues at different ages. In addition to that, something that we have an issue to on the quarantine in large amounts, and I don't know about other parts in the country. Sexual abuse is real. Sexual grooming is rampant and relevant and happening in every space you can think about. And the fact that children come forward to their parents first, the initial protectors, and get shut down does not help our future generation. If a child comes and says, mommy or daddy, granny, grandfather, auntie, uncle, daddy, or even mommy, my brother, my sister, somebody touched me, it should be taken seriously. We have to stop sweeping abuse under the rug, especially sexual abuse. Touching and fingering, grooming, all of these things are real. And what I found personally is that a lot of males that I would have interacted with would have been abused at very young ages and later turned around and become or ended up being gay. And LGBTQ is a whole different conversation by itself because everybody's not ready for that. But still, if you want to sweep sexual abuse under the rug, don't expect your son to bring home a daughter-in-law. These things are very much real. And outlying countries, outlying areas or communities have it so difficult. But a very important question. Somebody raised the point about, at least 100 social workers coming out from UG. I studied social work at the Berbice campus. How come is it that when scholarships are being given out, you see a lot of scholarships for overseas engineering or oil and gas things, but where are the psychiatry, psychologists, clinical psychology, all of the specialized scholarships for mental health area? We need specialists. We need specialists, and we do not have that. And you can't keep grouping social workers, to make it seem as if, they're going to be capable of handling everything. If people in oil and gas are making $200,000 a month, social workers, mental health people need to be making $300,000, because dealing with people problems is not easy. All of our NDPs, all of our schools, all of our regions should have psychologists and psychiatrists. It is not fair for a social worker from Region 5 to refer children who have issues to Georgetown, and they're not getting that passage back.
Thank
Thank
you very much, Ms. Henry, for Thank you very much, Ms. Henry, for your comments, and I know that the panelists will take note of it. We have the representative from Ministry of Education here, and trust me, I know that this is something that we will start to work on. Before we move into the other questions, I would just like to acknowledge and welcome our Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Before we move to the other questions, we have another session that will be starting at 3:30. So I'm just going to ask persons to make your comments very briefly and your questions very briefly so that we can swiftly move on into the next segment of the conference. I know that all of your comments and questions are important and we don't want to sweep anything aside. So if you would like to meet any of the panelists, you can do so after the session once we don't get through everybody's question this afternoon. So I think I'll take 2 questions from the students on this one side because we have 2 students here. 1, 2, 3. And then we will take the gentleman. And then we will wrap up for this afternoon.
Excuse me, I was indicating earlier, however, you're not looking this way. So I'm here. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Breann Michael, and I am a child protection officer. So I am not sure if the representative from the Ministry of Education is aware of what is going on. I am very much thankful that we have guidance and counselors within the school system. However, certain protocols need to be established because everything is being referred to child care. We're already overwhelmed. We're dealing with access custody. We're dealing with physical abuse. We're dealing with neglect, sexual, court matters, both magistrate, family court, pre-charge reports, delinquency. We're receiving reports that students are not going to school. We're receiving reports that students are being bullied. We're receiving children are being left home alone. We're expected to go out in the fields. We're expected to do medical, so many things. Only on Monday, we received a referral from the guidance and counselors stating that a child wanted to jump over the school rails. So I'm thinking that they could have dealt with that. They could have spoken to the child before referring that matter to us. So certain things need to be established. Even the welfare officers come to us, refer matters. It is overwhelming. Yes. It is overwhelming. It is too much. So when you hear people say, okay, child protection is not doing anything, it's a lot. And a lot of persons do not know that. And we're working for what, $98,000 a month. That's what we take home. That's what we take home. 98,000. And you have degrees, I have a master's, and that's what I'm taking home. But what will I do? I love what I do. I love helping children, but it is too much. So I'm just asking for some consideration. I'm asking for persons to at least assist us in some sort of way.
Thank you very much, Miss Michael. So let us have the students, please.
Good afternoon, respective protocols. I am Abhishek Taniram, representing Lenore Secondary School. My concern about suicide is the factors that lead to suicide, mainly either by being bullied by students or abused at home, etc. We can end negative thoughts by seeking help by someone, by ministry, or possibly your teacher. Persons should be open about these things and confident to talk about these things or thoughts. Suicide should be stopped. Get help if you're suffering mental health. As a fellow student said, we should be involved in more sports or something we love doing, as in listening to soft music, reading novels and traveling, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we had another young lady.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is based on anxiety. So, as it relates to anxiety, right? To some extent, it causes memory loss, which isn't good for someone's academic life. So, my question is: not every child is like sports oriented. So, I need suggestions about like stuff that we could do to cope with this anxiety.
Helen?
Professor and I were just speaking about that exactly in response to the comments made by the young lady from Berbice, that you can find creative channels to outlets, art, and I'd invite Professor to possibly just elaborate.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't quite hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
you. I agree. Yes. I think many people communicate so well through arts and through dance, through music, as well as through sports and conversation. But I think the possibilities for drawing in the creative energies of students again can be considered by talking with them. So asking a school class what it is that they would like to do and asking for ideas and participation. It's a very important consideration because, as I said before, we all communicate in different ways.
Yes, thank you very much. And in addition to that, we have things like art therapy, music therapy, and other creative interventions that can be introduced into the school setting. Yes, Miss, let's go to the gentleman over here first because he was waiting, and then we'll take you and we'll ask to close off the question and answering for this afternoon. Please remember you can engage the panelists anywhere you see them during the remainder of the conference. Go ahead.
My name is Dr. Daniels. I've completed 77 years on this earth, and the difference in the way I was brought up to what it is today has changed, and not changed for the better. When I was a preteen, I had my only one grandmother, but I had uncles and aunties that I could have gone to when I couldn't take situations to my mom and dad. I had elders in the church that I could go, and they were my mentors. And today I find that it's so difficult to find somebody in the family circle that we as children could relate to. I grew up with about 20 of my first cousins, went to the same school and so on. And that gave us a support, but most important, it established our own self-esteem. And in the school system, we had music festivals where children, well, even in the school, we had to learn poems every Friday afternoon. Our parents helped us to memorize those poems. And that built up our self-esteem. And we met at the town hall, school against school. And that did so much, not only to teach us how to learn, but our self-esteem was so high that we could have taken that and ran with it. We had the Boy Scouts and the Girl Guides and the Brownies, and that taught us how to relate to the community and to be responsible. And then we became independent, do our own thing, and we forgot the foundations on which we were. We had to make our own toys. And strange enough, it taught us the confidence of going and make something and the pride with it. But as we matured, we pushed all of those things aside. And we assumed that the technology would have replaced it. More significant, my mother left school when she was 12 years of age and planted rice. And when I was in high school, she was working as a domestic. My father was a security guard. But my mother always said that if you're to get out of this system, you must have an education, a piece of paper. And yet today we find we have young people 3, 4, 5, 6 years after they left high school have not corrected their missing English and mathematics. And the whole society seems to accept that. We speak of the good old days. And there were some days when watermelon and flour. But what I'm saying is, if we go back to those days and pick out the best of those practices that gave us a foundation, it would help us to solve, not to put plaster on what we have, but to prevent these situations from developing again, and let the young people know that they're not alone, that the whole society is there to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So on that note, I would like to say thank you very much to... Oh yes, I promised, miss. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols established. I know we would all agree that sports does help mental health. So I am suggesting that a needs assessment survey be done to determine what sports the children in each school are interested in, and there's a collaboration between the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport and the Ministry of Education to ensure that there's safe space, facilities, and the relevant equipment that are needed for those sports be provided for our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miss, and thank you very much to our panelists for your insight into the matter in terms of creating safe spaces for our young people. I know that there's a lot more questions to be asked, but I will ask you to please meet with the panelists outside and have a discussion. Right now, we will go into the closing ceremony. Dr. Over, could you see if there's a break? Do you say take a break? All right. So we have Ask the Expert session that will be done outside by Miss Alicia Solomon. So you can meet with her, and then we'll come back about 3:30 for the closing ceremony. We're a bit now it's 3:30? Dr. Hovet, could you say what time we will now commence the closing ceremony? Let's take 15 minutes break, and then we'll come back for the closing ceremony. Thank you again, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you very much. You did a great job. I am, yes. Are you really? Fantastic. Well done.
Northampton, I will child advocate.
Let's take it. Let's stop. Yeah.
Child advocate at University of Northampton. I do not know where that is.
Sure.
Colombia.
People from Chavo. They're making more than teachers and what is that? Oh, right.
Fundamentally.
That's what I want to get. We need to get. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Very nice having you on your podcast.